Well, hello everyone around the world. Welcome to the next episode of Personality Yoda and the interviews we've been doing with different personalities. So whether you're on LinkedIn, whether you're on Facebook, whether you're watching on Giant, you are incredibly welcome. And what I want to encourage you to do is, as I go through the interview with Amy, if things that we share or she shares resonate with you, then please feel free to put your comments in the chat. We may not answer that many questions, but any comments you have or encouragements along the way, we'd be welcome. Well, it's my incredible privilege to introduce another amazing guest to Personality Yoda. You're going to meet an absolute fireball, this woman. I'm beside myself with excitement. I don't think anybody has promoted Personality Yoda in their interview quite to the same extent that Amy Mast has. And Amy is a connector, creative, pioneer. So ENFP, for those of you who speak that language. So without further ado, Amy, welcome to Personality Yoda. Thank you for agreeing to be my special guest today. I feel very, very honored. So
the honor is all mine. I am super excited to be here, and I'm excited about our conversation and kind of trying to unpack the specific elements and tendencies of our unique personality as a connector, creative pioneer. So thanks for having me.
Fantastic, Amy. There will be many watching today because nobody loves this sort of thing more than connective creative pioneers. So I know they will be in the background, and I know they won't be able to keep themselves quiet. So I'll have to put some comments in. But Amy, just for our audience, tell us a little bit about you. You know, some of the kind of third gear questions, which I know you are particularly good at. Where are you from? What have you done? Family background, things you love doing. Give us a little bit of a pen sketch of who we have with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks. So I grew up in Pennsylvania in the Allegheny National Forest area, so very primitive, woodsy kind of area. Didn't appreciate it nearly as much growing up as I do now, going home to that environment. I now live in Ohio with my husband and 4 boys. And
Wow.
yeah, we've got young boys, ages 4, 5, 7, and 8, and they are a hoot. So we're busy. It's great.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so I grew up playing every sport imaginable, and just kind of living in the athletic world personally as an athlete. But then I actually chose a profession that took me into athletics as well. So that's been my world. That's what I know, and that's the environment that I thrive in. It's really a good fit because I get to meet all kinds of people all over the place and help athletes out with injuries and things like that. So that's been kind of my world, and we enjoy just doing family things when we're on our downtime. So it's fun.
I can't imagine there's a vast amount of downtime with the 4, 5, 7, 8-year-old boys. That's pretty impressive, even for an elite athlete, Amy, to push out that many boys in that period of time. Eventually, you will get to a point, I suspect, where life returns to some normality. But I can't imagine that without a fair degree of activity. And I can only imagine the amount of food that those guys will push through as they head into later teens.
Yeah, I've always said I'm not going to be proud later when they're all in their teenage years. Like, everybody can drop off their leftovers on our doorstep, and I'm not going to be hesitant to welcome that.
So tell us a little bit about how did you get connected to Giant? Is one question, and particularly because it's been the theme of our series here. How did you first engage with 5 Voices? And are there any particular examples where the insights of voices have been particularly poignant for you and can be in any area of life, with family, with work, whatever it is? So a bit about the Giant connection, how that came about, and then a little bit about how voices has impacted you to the extent you'd want to come on my show and talk about it. So go on, tell everyone a little bit about those 2.
Oh, yeah, I could talk all day about this, but I'll give you the brief version here. So I was introduced to 5 Voices from a mutual friend between you and I, is Susie Lance. I ran track with her at Malone. And so she posted one day on Facebook, if you're interested in a book, she's really into reading and lots of books, and she's always offering suggestions. Well, it was, good 5 years ago or so that she posted the 5 Voices book, saying, if you're looking for something that is really going to open your eyes to personality and where you fit into this world and what it's like to be on the other side of you. So she, of course, suggested that book, and I immediately went on Amazon and bought it and read it. And I'll tell you, the first time I read it, I was on maternity leave. So I was, sitting, taking care of little ones and stuff. And I read this book. And the first time reading it through, it clicked for me. It just was like, open my eyes. Oh my goodness, it nailed me so specifically and so accurately. And then, but of course, in the midst of my world, I was in survival mode. And so I really didn't have the capacity to like take this and do anything with it yet. But a couple of years later, or a year and a half later, I reread it again. And then all of a sudden I started to it made sense of my world around me the second time through. So the people that I work with, the boss that I have, my husband, all of these other relationships, it's like, oh my goodness, this is now making sense outside of myself even. And so that's when I really wanted to do something with it and get involved in it and just really digest all of it and apply it to my world. And it's been amazing ride ever since. And as far as how I apply the 5 voices, though, is in my direct relationship. So my husband, the relationship that I have with my husband, us understanding each other and forming healthy lines of communication, objective language, that's really probably been the biggest thing that has influenced me, and it continues to influence me on a daily basis.
What voice order do you think your husband is, Amy?
Oh, he is a wonderful INFJ. He's a creative connector pioneer.
Okay, creative connector. Well, that probably, at least there's a lot of love in your house. And any friend of Susie is a complete superstar in my book. She's one of my absolute faves around the world. So that is so cool. And I think the thing is, when Helen often smiles. I mean, those of you who know Giant know Helen really is my long-suffering wife of nearly 29 years. And Helen was really the crucible in which a lot of this personality stuff got worked out, mainly because I was complete opposite to Helen. So I think the thing is, when you begin to realize that actually you have tools and lenses that help you understand how you relate to those you love most, but often struggle to. And I think that's the joy for me, and I love listening to other people tell the story, so thank you, is what it really does is it provides a way of being able to communicate and understand what other people are wired and how they react. And human interaction is at the core of who we are. And anything which helps us do that well with our family, with our teams, with our organizations, it is just such a joy. So thank you, Amy, for sharing that. Now, those of you who've been following the show know that really we follow a tried and trusted path, because in some ways it's interesting, and this is a horrifying moment, and I think Tracy may share a lens at the moment. Because I always say to people is, one of the things that people often struggle with is to go, well, how do I lead people well? And learning how to create the environments where maybe your children, maybe your people you're at work with, or people you do life with, learning how to calibrate what we call high support and high challenge is never something you'll get right by accident. There is no way in God's green earth I've ever met anybody who has the capacity to be a liberating leader without tools or lenses, even if they wanted to. So assuming, Amy, for 1 minute, I am your boss, okay? I am the team leader, probably is more appropriate in this world. What clues would you give me? What advice would you give me that actually would be, if I said, Amy, I want to be a liberating leader for you. I want to learn how to create the environment where you get to be the very, very best that you can be. What would I need to be doing? What would high sport look like? What would high challenge? We'll have a conversation. Give us some clues of some of the things that you would most love me to do for me if I wanted the very best for you.
Yeah, I love this question. So for support, and support's always great to lead with a connector. They need to know that you're for them and you're not just going right after the details and the agenda. You kind of need to just make small talk a little bit first, or ask a few less focused questions, informal kind of things. So I would say communication is of utmost importance, lots of it. And so I always say, communicate your expectations for me very clearly and actually often. Some other voices don't quite understand why it needs to happen often, because if they've said it once, that's enough, right? But for a connector, it needs to be like at the forefront of our conversation, almost on a monthly basis, if not more often than that. Let's review, let's make sure we're united and on the same page, so that communication often and be very clear with expectations with those things. So that's going to bring me a ton of support, but challenge at the same time. And then another one that I have learned is give me a deadline. If we're working on a project, my portion of the project, you need to give me a deadline, because I am by nature a procrastinator. And so I'm going to think about it, mull over it, but I'm not actually going to put anything down until, the deadline is getting closer and closer, it's looming. And I then all of a sudden need to get focused. And honestly, I produce my best work under pressure. So that deadline is not just because I need somebody to keep me accountable. It's because I need that window of pressure to really produce my best work. The other thing would be to ask me what I think about something that you care about. And this can be in work, outside of work. It doesn't matter. But if it's something that you care about, ask me about it, and see, really genuinely want to know my perspective on it. Or if I have a connection, of course, as a connector, do I have a connection that I can, reference or point you towards and connect you with? So that's going to make me come alive and have lots of energy. And then speaking of energy, create a safe space for my high energy, because it literally oozes out of me. This is me without coffee. I intentionally didn't have coffee today because I didn't want to have too much energy. And this is, so just so, if you're dealing with connectors, you really need to create that space where their positive energy comes out, and has a way to do that. If you're constantly going to shove me into my office in front of a computer and I don't have an outlet, that's not going to bring out the best in me for very long. I can only tolerate that for a short amount of time.
Amazing, Amy. Amazing. Here's one little piece though. So remember, you're a connector creative pioneer. Last week we had Tina, who was a connector creative nurturer. That version of the connector doesn't need deadlines. They set themselves. It's the particular connector creative pioneer, and you know who you are. And I love that Jeff on the bottom saying the deadlines are your friend. And it's that classic thing again. I always say to people is the golden rule is most people go, well, I'll do for you what I'd want done for me. And then we are surprised when we undermine our influence with those around us, because in the end, we are way more different. Human behaviors are way more different than we actually realize when we just look at the outside. So learning how to calibrate high support and high challenge is, I would say, one of the most fundamental skills of leadership and influence. And you don't have to be a personality Yoda to know why people behave the way they do. You would be amazed sometimes just by asking good questions. You gave me golden data there. I mean, honestly, it's like you swallowed the Connector Creative Pioneer book, and I love it because what I'm hearing and what others of you are listening, whether it's live or going back again, you will have Connector Creative Pioneers in your life. You will probably know about them, and the more different your voice is to them, the more you have to work at creating the environment where people like Amy can be at their best. I often say, rule of thumb for your average Connector Creative Pioneer, and we'll play it together now, learn to ask them this one question, and it almost unlocks everything. Amy, what are you most excited about right now? So come on, play. If I was to give you one thing, if this was just me meeting Amy at work, whatever it might be, and I go, Amy, what are you really excited about right now? Come on, tell me.
I am super excited about the work opportunities that I have in front of me. There are a good handful of 4 or 5 that have initiated. I love new, and so the newness of things is super exciting to me. And I love that I get the opportunity to work with athletic coaches and coach them along in their leadership. And I'll tell you, I'm celebrating something just recently this past week. We actually had conflict that we had to work through, and not very many people would celebrate this, but it was such a learning opportunity. And the growth that happened because of that conflict resolution is so amazing. It changes cultures. And so I'm getting to witness it, and I
Come
get so
on.
excited about it. It's amazing. And I keep reinforcing them. This is good. You are going to love this once it's over and once we're beyond it. And it's just amazing. I'm super excited.
One of my favorite authors, a guy called Henry Newon, wrote a book called The Wounded Healer, and it's often resonated with me. We usually find that we're the most committed to helping people make breakthroughs in the areas where we of ourselves have experienced that breakthrough and healing as well. So in some ways, though I may be a pioneer and at times I can be pretty direct with my grenade launcher, there is still this deep desire in me to help others not make the same mistakes I did. And I think those things that you've shared are so helpful. So I always say, let your Connected Creative Pioneers celebrate well. Ask them what they're excited about, because if they're not excited about anything, then that is a huge warning to you that they are not functioning well. I've never met a healthy Connected Creative Pioneer who doesn't have an awful lot of things to celebrate, because when they're well and when they're living this integrated life, that's the thing that most of you realize, is to go, how do I not really be at work or at play or at rest or at home? How do I just be me doing life? And you will always be connecting people to the things that you're excited about, to the opportunities. And I would say that most people look at you and go, you're the most amazing salesperson ever. But there's nothing more insulting to a Connected Creative Pioneer, because they're not selling anything. What I'm doing is I'm connecting people I love and care about to opportunities that actually they're excited about. So that's when you're dealing with a healthy Connected Creative Pioneer, when they've got lots of things to be excited about, and you don't watch this differentiation of work. But deadlines, Amy, I would be absolutely ruthless with you if I was your boss. Not because I don't care about you, it's because I really care about you. And I would say the deadline is Friday, 12 o'clock. And if you miss it by 1 minute, then the next project you will do with a Gantt chart with a daily check-in. And every person like you, Amy, will look at me and twinkle your little eyes and go, Steve, you wouldn't really do that to me, would you? And I will go, I will, because I want to be a liberating leader for you. And you'd only miss one deadline once. The thought of having to do a project with a Gantt chart and daily check-ins will be so horrific for you that you would actually finish ahead of the deadline. So the moment I hint, by the way, and go, it's Friday, 12 o'clock, or maybe Monday, 9 o'clock, the way you're wired, you've only ever heard Monday, 9 o'clock, and the pressure won't kick in until Sunday evening. So thinking about how you create the environment where you are at your best. And the other thing I'd say to you is, I always try and make sure that you don't get stuck in the details for a long time. That guardian detail is really hard. And what usually happens is you put it off, your tax return or the board report or invoicing, whatever it is. And I watch them again and again. They often say, well, I'm going to allocate it for this day. And that day keeps going further and further back, because it looks like a nightmare for your average Connected Creative Pioneer to have to spend a whole day doing detail work. And it never happens. So do little and often. I would say put an hour in your day when you do the things that you really don't like doing. But if you leave it for a whole day, you'll never do it, because it's almost impossible for you to function for that long. So I hope, Amy, you'd think I would be a good boss or team leader, because
Absolutely.
I would put you front and center, and I would say, Amy, you can be the intersection between the organization and the marketplace. That's where you're at your absolute best, translating backwards and forward between the marketplace clients and the organization. There is no voice order better in the entire world. So every time you tell me, Steve, I want to be the COO, I'm going, you can't, I won't let you, because it isn't going to be any fun for you long term, and it's certainly not going to be fun for us. But when it comes to being almost like a free radical, I always try and create the opportunity for people like you, Amy, to be as free as possible from the structure of daily responsibilities, because you will always make things happen. And in some ways, if you're excited and passionate about the outcome of the project and the mission, you will always give 140%. And I will make sure I notice those things, and I will make sure I celebrate your contribution. and I will get out of my way to work out what is the public affirmation and reward that's going to make you feel very, very special. How does that sound?
Oh man, sign me up. I'm ready. That sounds perfect.
I think you already did, but at least you know now why it works. And for those of you listening, you go, well, that wouldn't work for me. I think you were playing me, Steve. Here's the thing. You have to be genuine, because the connector knows when you're not. So if I'm being manipulative, Amy will know. But if she knows I'm for her, and she knows, as you said, that relationship comes before everything else, and I'm prepared to invest time with Amy, not because we have to, but because I want to, not just about work, but because we're doing life sometimes together, that changes the goal and it changes the game. So that's great fun. I hope that's helpful. I've seen some various ENFPs there, little Connected Credit Pioneers. Paula Tully, one of my superstars here over in the UK, she's celebrating you as a fellow person of her species, shall we say. So let's come on to the next one, Amy. This is my favorite one for you, okay? So this is probably what you think about most of the time. A lot of my guests often have to think about it in advance of going, well, what would I say? You've probably got about 5 choices. So here's what I frame it as. Amy, you and I are going to go into some kind of business or partnership together, okay? Any amount of money that's required, all of the resources I have and know in the world are going to be brought to bear to help fulfill what you would most love to see happen. That almost is the bucket list desire of going, if I got to the end of my life and I hadn't done this, I would feel like I'd not done the thing that I would most love to have done in my life. So that's the framework. We're going to remove all the inhibitions. Okay, so someone else is going to look after all the kids. Don't you worry about that. All the things like your 401k are taken care of. Money won't be the issue. Whatever we want to do, we can do. The question is, what are we going to be partnering together on? And from my perspective, does it really fit your 70-30? Does it really fit the way that you were made? So come on, dream out loud. What would that dream look like if it's the one thing you go, Steve, if that was true and you would help me with it, this is what I would most love to give my life for?
This is an amazing question. I could definitely, like you say, list 5 or at least easily, but it wasn't difficult for me to think of one that came right to the front of my mind. And it would be, you and I would go into business. We would start a company or a system. We'd develop a system, digital, that would scale 5 voices and 100x leader education to high school juniors and seniors all over the world. High school juniors and seniors all over the world. Because the reason for this, the reason I'm already doing this, not all over the world, but I'm doing this with one particular group. And, they're right on the cusp of needing to decide what they want to do with their lives. They're searching for colleges, they're searching for jobs, whatever it is. And they are asking themselves all these questions. And their parents, of course, are asking them these difficult, life-altering questions. And they're supposed to be able to decide this when they don't even really know themselves. And my heart just absolutely goes out to them. And I have such a passion for teaching them who they are. And the 5 Voices does that. And it does it in such a simple way that I have yet to have a high school junior or senior say, this doesn't make sense. Every time they say, this is amazing. You just explained exactly who I am. Yeah. I didn't know that somebody actually understood how I feel. And I hear these things all the time, and they're talking about it, amongst each other in their classes, and they're having conversations. I even have had a couple of kids that have established really deep friendships with each other because they're like, oh my goodness, you're the same as me. That's awesome. So do you do this? And, all of these little conversations happening. And I, of course, am just loving it. Now, taking that and scaling it is the trick, right? So the information is so valuable, but how do we educate this age group effectively, and how do we scale it and create it as a platform that they will engage with, because this is a generation that does TikTok and YouTube and all of that. And so it would need to be that kind of a situation. And somehow we need to educate all of the teachers and the administrators and those kinds of things, but so that they can reinforce it. But I just think that how many people have we coached so far with Giant that say, oh my goodness, I wish somebody would have taught this to me back when I was a young, person and trying to make something of myself. I would have saved myself a lot of pain and heartache. And, so we hear those kinds of things all the time. So that makes me think, well, yeah, let's go do that.
Well, here's the first thing, Amy. I think is when you get passionate about something, it's almost like nothing's ever going to stop you. And I love it. And I also go in terms of what I call Cockrams Law, because if Pareto could have one, why couldn't I? I'm always asking is what you want to do with your future. Does it actually fit the 70-30 of your wiring as a connected creative pioneer? And the answer, of course, is absolutely categorically yes. Because if I'm going to cut you in half and go, okay, how does Amy Mast bleed? What I'll find is in that core of who you are will be is, how do I help people fulfill their potential? How do I help people be the very best they can possibly be? How do I help them live lives of meaning? And how do we make the world a better place for more people? I guess. That sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
So what usually needs to happen is the difficulty is not how many ideas have you got, it's which one are you going to chase after and go after, because it's actually something that's worth giving your life for. Now, the lovely thing is, I know in the Giant ecosystem and elsewhere, there are people who want to do the same thing. I can think of at least 5 people that I know right now that actually go exactly the same as you, saying, I would love to think about how could we make voices, tools available. And for me, it's a huge encouragement, because you remember when Jeremy and I started, the reason why Voices was created was because I used to teach Myers-Briggs the whole time. And, it's the reason I slipped back into using old language. And my daughter, Giant's Tools, we used to say an educated 13-year-old has to be able to understand it, use it, teach their friends, or it won't scale in the new world where everything is just so busy and cluttered. And my daughter, Izzy, at 15, came to me and said, Daddy, I love the fact I'm an ENFP, so she's the same as you. She said, I can understand it and use it, but it's too complicated to teach to my friends. So doesn't it violate all the principles that you and Jeremy are saying you built Giant on? And I went like, ugh. So Voices was written in the source code to actually be something that educated children could understand, use, and teach their friends. So I can't tell you how encouraging it is to know that A, that's true, and B, that's what you would like to do. And I think one of the things that I often get asked, Amy, is most of the vocabulary that Voices is delivered in is actually currently written for teams in the corporate world of adults. There's a reason why it's written in the language of teams for the corporate world, because when you're trying to work out how you get a business off the ground, you don't start in the altruistic space of thinking, I wonder if we could help children know who they are. You start with who's likely to potentially pay us some money so that we can get off the ground and really start to multiply. But I will promise you that at some stage in your life and my life, we will have the right team of people. And it's not me, by the way, because I've done the basic laying of it, but I don't know that age group as well as some people do who are with them. But we will turn the questions and the examples into probably almost like a youth version of 5 Voices. Don't quite know how we'll do it yet, so don't feel, Giant, that we're changing the goalposts here. But I love the thought of having a team of people that could actually take what's already there and works, but actually really codifies it and puts it in language and vocabulary that is easier to access for high school children. Because in the end, if we can help them make choices about what they study before they spend $60,000 a year of their parents' hard-earned money or whatever it might be, or a loan they're going to pay back forever in your part of the world, or they're choosing their first jobs, or they're choosing what they study, wouldn't it be amazing if they actually knew whether this was going to be long term something that was actually life-giving and really fitted them. So I think it's a brilliant idea. And here's my promise: whenever I meet people that are trying to do the same thing now in our world, I will make sure that you are always included in that conversation. If you haven't met a lady called Jazz Ampafar, who's over here in the UK, Jazz, I won't say the two of you were separated at birth, because you are of different ethnicities, I would say, but fundamentally it's the same burning passion that just about every connector creative pioneer I meet has something about them that resonates with wanting to give what's been transformatory for them to the next generation, and actually helps them learn earlier what we have. So I love it, Amy. I would keep encouraging you, as always, to hone and refine it so you can actually describe what it will look like when it happens. I've given you a clue of one piece I think that we'll need to work on, which is how do we take what's already in the Five Voices ecosystem, how do we make it more friendly in its vocabulary and language and analogy, and possibly even in its kind of presentation, so that youth can actually be part of it. But I love it. It fits you. If anyone's going to pull it off, Amy, it'll be you. And the great thing is, your boys will need it one day.
Agreed. Yes. Yeah. I appreciate that. It's good to hear that I'm not, just kind of coming up with ideas that aren't necessarily valid. It's nice to be validated. I appreciate that.
So one of the things you can do, this is the pioneer connector rather than the purely altruistic. I always look for, where are the places like schools where I have favor with principals or senior teachers, where actually they might actually pay me something, maybe not my full commercial rate, but to be a partner with them, to actually look at whether we could pilot some of the new content with them and actually use them as an example. So I know we've done as Giants some work with Providence Christian Academy in Atlanta. I've had some great fun working there with their team over the last 6 months with Armandi Drew. Armandi is yet another connector creative pioneer that you need to speak to. She has an incredible heart and passion for that age. So there's lots of you in the Giant world, Amy, already, and I'm sure those pieces. But the more you can codify it and refine it and say, well, if that's what the end goal is, what steps might we need to take to get there? And ultimately, what's the next step? That's the bit where, when you've got that one, you can come back to me with another call and we'll actually work out how we do it. Because I love vision, but I love vision enough to go, how does it become reality? So there we go. Look at that. That's Rachel Ivan's telling us she loves the dream ambition, Amy. Everyone's celebrating you down there. My kids coming up for secondary age, and I'd love them to learn in school about personality, leadership, and influence. My middle daughter is hoping in her application to be head girl at the school of these. Basically, it's like Hogwarts for girls. There's about 160 of them. And one of the things she wants to do is, she's now 17, or will be next week, and she's saying, I want my friends to have access to this. So they need you, Amy, as well. Any other thoughts on that, awesome. Amy? I love it.
Yeah, I think that's great. I love all the chat coming in and the affirmation that, yes, we need this, and kind of connecting with Steve Foster's name came up, that's already doing this. And I love Jazz. She is incredible. I think that if her and I were put into a small room together, we might just explode. I'm not sure. So yeah, there would be a lot of conversation and high energy happening. It'd be great. Yeah, it's amazing. I appreciate all of that and all the encouragement. It's good.
We may need to have a giant educational summit in London when lockdown lifts, and we can have a big party over here, and anyone else who's excited about exploring this can come over, because that would be really cool.
It would be. That'd be amazing. I'd come for that, for sure.
It will give you a chance to get a respite care from all your boys as well, Amy, and let your husband do something as well. So.
Yes, yeah, it's true.
So here's my last question, okay, which is, again, you are one of the most switched on, self-aware. It's almost like you've swallowed the giant Bible. But if there was one area in your life at the moment, if you were to go, I'd really love to process something with Yoda, hopefully I might be able to offer some insights and thoughts that might be helpful for you. What's the most live issue for you right now in your life leadership that would maybe be helpful to process?
Yeah, I would be happy to share something and be slightly vulnerable about what some of my tendencies are that I've had to work through, and have Giant has just been instrumental in helping me deal with it. And so one of the main things is, because of my energy and because of my comfort level in social situations, and
Mm,
my deep desire to always want to connect and push the boundaries and things like that. When I get into a group setting, um, I can tend to overshare, or say, or take over the conversation,
mm,
dominate the conversation, tell too many stories, or even push the boundaries of topic of conversation. And it tends to, all of a sudden people get uncomfortable, or they kind of shut down, or they withdraw. And if I'm not careful, if I'm not intentional and aware of those things, I can really undermine my influence with the people around me. I can hurt feelings. I can really just do some damage, and really bring unintended heartache onto myself in those scenarios. And the thing is, there's a tool that has helped me, that was created
mm,
by Giant, and I have to implement this tool on a regular basis, even though it's become easier and easier with practice.
mm.
And some people around me might even be like, I don't see that as an issue for you. It's because I work really hard on it. It is always needing to be at the front of my mind when I'm, bouncing around full of energy and wanting to socialize and things. So this tool that Steve pulled up, I would love for you to walk us through it, and then kind of just help all of us connectors unpack why this is so important for us.
Well, Amy, thank you. I think the first thing I'd say is that self-awareness is the foundation of influence in the world we live in today. And you have to know yourself to lead yourself. You have to know your tendencies to be able to choose your action. So what you've identified is a tendency which will be hardwired into every connector, creative pioneer. It's at your best. It's almost more dangerous if you're silent. If you are down in the dumps and kind of, not wanting to share, that's usually a sign that something really more significant is not good. So knowing yourself to lead yourself means discretion and discipline is really your friend. And I have the same issue, Amy, and so does Jeremy. So this was a big tool for us. And what happens is I literally write one on each knuckle. I write discretion on my left hand and I write discipline on my right hand. Because in the end, if we are accidental, you in any environment when you're excited will overshare and will over talk and will in many ways over control the environment by simply being the largest personality in the room. So that is a tendency, and it will actually happen most when you're most excited about what it is you want to share. So the reason why discretion and discipline is there as a tool, Amy, is not to stop you being Amy Mast. No one in this world wants to mute you, to neuter you, to kind of stop you being this force of nature for good in our world that you are. But what we are saying to you is this tool says, have this in mind when you feel the excitement rising, or you are conscious that I might have spoken quite a lot and I haven't really listened to other people. So the discretion discipline is what to share. How much do I need to share? Who to share it with and when to share it? Because there are times when sometimes less is more. Okay. That's a phrase which I often use with my both pioneer connectors who are coming on next week, by the way. We've got Al Abdullah coming on next week as a pioneer connector. So if he's listening, this will be advance warning. Once we know we tend to overshare, we actually have to choose a conscious action. And that's the reason why rules of engagement, Amy, is so helpful. As a pioneer, I go last. Oh, it's so hard to go last in a conversation or an idea in a brainstorm when I already know what the answer should be and I'm ready to make it happen. So learning how to listen well, learning to be interested before trying to be interesting is another one of those mantras that I always try and bring into any environment, team discussion. because my tendency, like yours, is to try and tell you how interesting my idea is, rather than choosing first to be interested to try and hear all the perspectives of the people in the room. So the problem, Amy, is it will never go away as a tendency. You don't graduate the School of Self-Awareness. I wish you did. I wish I did. But the fact you're aware of it means it's much less likely to be an issue. And what I would do, Amy, if I were you, is I would always have some people in the room I trust who would have a code word or a code action. My wife goes to me like this, like that, like shut up. I don't think that's particularly loving. I was hoping she might find another one. But that's usually the code for Steve, shut up and listen to other people. Now, that's a pioneer response, but with you, it's just think about, how do I make sure I've heard all the other opinions first? How do I have friends who help me get this right? And how do I be interested before I'm trying to be interesting? So that's the first thing that I would share. So does that make sense, Amy?
It totally makes sense, and I'll go one further. That I have a group of friends that are extremely close, and that's my safety. As I can be 100% myself, and they are not going to judge me. They're not going to place any kind of expectations on me. They've seen me at my best, they've seen me at my worst, and they accept me regardless. And so once a year minimum, we all get together for an entire weekend somewhere, and we all just recharge in that way. And I encourage any other connector, you need to have that safe space, that safe group of friends, where you can truly let your hair down and be yourself, and it's 100% acceptable and safe to do so. Because the rest of the time, when you're in a formal setting, you're gonna feel like you're somewhat tempering your vocabulary or your energies and things like that. And so you really need to create a space where you can do that and be who you're made to be.
That's so good. That's such great advice. You have to have a safe place, because you need to talk out loud a lot, particularly when you're excited and you're ideating, you're visioning, you're dreaming. You need a place where you can do that, and the person is going to celebrate and collaborate without critique initially. Because the other thing, Amy, that I always throw in if I'm going to be the process, the biggest challenge to most connector creative pioneers is defensiveness. Is when you think you have an answer and you're ready to go, and actually inviting other people in to help make what is already good great. So you will always be good just by what you do. Probably in your case, you'll be very, very good. But if you want to change the world and be outstanding, it's almost like we were made never to be able to do it all on our own. So the reason why I love voices as well is it reminds me that if I don't allow the voices I find most difficult to actually shape the outcome, I will always end up with something which is less than it could have been. Now, sometimes you haven't got the time and that's fine. But for you, when you're shaping the future, the issue is for you, if you think of the way you're wired, how do you hear the nurturers and the guardian voices, your fourth and fifth, that are often feel like they're slowing everything down. They're not as excited about what you're excited about. They're asking the difficult, pragmatic questions when all you want to do is, hey, I want to celebrate and rah, it's going to be amazing. Because what they're doing is going, Amy, I love your vision. I want to play my part in helping it become reality. But I can only do that with you if when I bring challenge or I bring a question, that you don't see it as personal threat and you don't interpret me as being disloyal. Because ENFPs have a tendency, that connect creative pioneer, to go, you are either 100% for me or you're against me. And it's that understanding, and I hope Voices helps with this. We're going, that person is not against you. They are actually more for you than you realize, and they are more valuable to you in achieving the things that you dream for and vision than you would realize. But it will take more time than you would want. And it does involve the ability to receive challenge without becoming defensive and dismissing the individual that represents that as now being not on my team or disloyal. Any of that sound familiar, Amy?
It certainly does. Absolutely. I'll say the one caveat to that is growing up in athletics
Yes.
has helped me to be able to overcome that a bit and receive
Yeah.
critique, because
Brilliant.
any coach I've ever played for, of course, is going to try
There
to
you
make me
go.
better and critique.
There
And
you go.
so learning how to process that's been really helpful. But what I do appreciate what you just said is that it's always going to take more time than what I am comfortable with. I'm always going to be moving faster than those around me, good chance. And so taking that time to slow down and listen to their input and value it. I'll say I've probably put the most amount of time studying The Guardian, because it
Yeah.
is the most difficult for me to access. It is the opposite of me. And so I do have a great personal friend that is mature Guardian. And so she is
You
my
are.
filter. I try to run my ideas through her and let her have at it first before moving forward. And it's painful.
I absolutely love it. Now, Amy, are you a Disney fan?
Sure. Yeah, we haven't
So,
been, but
I love Disney movies. It's my confession. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I've watched most of them with
yes.
her. And my
Yes.
favorite one of all time, I think, is Frozen 2.
We haven't seen that one
Now,
yet.
so if you've not seen, I've only got 4 boys, so you may not have as much opportunity as I've had with all my girls to watch them. But if you want an example of, and this goes to everyone who's watching today and going to watch something, on Disney, there is the making of Frozen 2. You might need to watch Frozen 1, Amy, before you do it. And it shows the 4-year process of the creative team at Disney of how they made the movie. I've never seen a better example of what team looks like, where the sublimation of ego for the good of the outcome with people who are best in the world at what they do. And I think the lady who leads it, the creative director of Disney, is probably either your type or more likely a connector creative. But fundamentally, there's no defensiveness in that model. And what they come up with is something which makes me cry every time I watch it. So if you get bored, it's on Disney Plus. I should be on commission. I've been basically saying to anyone who goes, Steve, what's the best example of teamwork you've ever seen? I said, I've got my examples I've worked with, but the best example of teamwork for the new world is actually the making of Frozen 2. It's a 4-part documentary series on Disney Plus. So there you go. If you want to, I've just given you an excuse to actually pay £5 for the month and watch that, because I think it captures everything we've just been talking about. Amy,
I love it.
we could go on forever, mainly because you are just an amazing lady, and I honestly thank you for being so easy to talk to and for being honestly so vulnerable and transparent, because I would say you are one of the healthiest versions of the Connect Creative Pioneer I've ever met, probably both physically and in terms of self-awareness. But the difference is the tendencies don't change. You've just learned to be very intentional in choosing your actions. And that's why America, and particularly things like people who've done elite sport or music or whatever it is, disciplining talent over time is always the most important attribute of a connected creative pioneer. Because you can change the world, but usually, if you're not careful, you end up being the jack of all trades, the master or the mistress of none, because you can do so many things. So having nailed online on Personality Yoda today what it is we're going to do, Amy, as the most important thing that you do, or at least the most important thing you do with work and life, I go, let's work out how we can make that happen and not do anything else until we've done it. How does that sound?
I love it. I love it.
Well,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.
And for those of you watching next week, as I said, we're going to have a guy called Al Abdullah, and he is a pioneer connector. So you will know some of those characters, I promise, and you'll begin to realize as you listen to different episodes, actually, human beings are far more different than we sometimes give it credit for. And just because someone looks a bit like you in a room does not mean they're wired like you. So from Personality Yoda today, Amy, thank you for being an amazing guest, and we will see you all next week for the Pioneer Connector.
Thanks, guys. Bye.